אני פה כי התעקשתי להיות פה, אני יוצא, האפרטהייד האמיתי, انتوا אפרטהייד האמיתי, انتوا بتعطونيش احكي, אני יוצא, אל תדאג, אני יוצא, انتوا האפרטהייד האמיתי,
God definitely works in strange ways. What you just witnessed took place yesterday in Israel's parliament, the Knesset. What did you see? An Arab-Israeli friend of mine was thrown out of a session titled From Occupation to Apartheid, hosted by anti-Israel forces who are part of the Israeli government. Why was my Arab-Israeli friend kicked out of that session? Because he was calling out their lies that Israel is not an apartheid state. He's an Arab-Israeli. They called him a traitor because he won't go along with their anti-Israel lies. So they kicked him out of the session in Israel's parliament, the Knesset. There are so many levels of insanity to break down in this one little episode. So let's start with the first basic one. Can't anyone see the irony that Arab Muslim members of Israel's government are calling Israel an apartheid state? If Israel actually were an apartheid state, they wouldn't be serving in Israel's parliament and definitely not part of the Israeli government. Folks, as you know, social media censorship is growing. The best way to support our video work for Israel is to subscribe to our video newsletter on pulseofisrael.com and to share our videos. If you are already a subscriber, then thank you. Let's now go deeper into the insanity of this whole incident. And there is a positive at the end. So this is what happened. The anti-Israel parties and party members, part of the new Bennett-Lapid government, well, they just held a session in the Knesset titled From Occupation to Apartheid, where they praised all the anti-Israel and pro-BDS, yes, pro-boycotting Israel organizations, who are all dedicated to destroying the Jewish state of Israel. Let that sink in. Members of Israel's current government just held a special session dedicated to destroying Israel. Now, there are a lot of people who support this government, even people on the right. How? Seriously, how? As I have said, since the idea of this government, which included joining with anti-Israel parties and party members of some Zionist parties, since it was first discussed, I've been saying that I don't care what good things people think can come from this government with right-winger Naftali Bennett acting as prime minister. This is still a tremendously damaging government on many, many levels. Again, this government includes a minister, Nitzan Horowitz, from the hostile anti-Jewish state Meretz party, who supports putting IDF soldiers on trial at the International Criminal Court at The Hague. It also includes Ibitzim Marana, an anti-Zionist Arab on the Labour Party, the party of Ben-Gurion, the prime minister who founded the State of Israel, and she also is anti-Zionist. If that all is not enough, it includes the Muslim Brotherhood Ram Party, as I've spoken about before, which is part of the global Muslim Brotherhood movement, totally against the State of Israel. These are just some of the people, and their fellow party members just held a session in Israel's parliament that supports boycotting Israel and destruction of Israel. How in the world can I and all of my fellow Israel advocates call out and shame other governments in the world for supporting those anti-Israel organizations if representatives of our own Israeli government support them? Now, some supporters of this government might excuse this event saying, oh, this session has nothing to do with the policy of this government, so just ignore it, right? Naftali Bennett obviously is against it, just ignore it. Well, how can they say such a thing? Because this government, which includes right, left, anti-Israel forces as well, was established to focus only on social issues while putting aside the ideological issues. That's what they say, that's their claim. But that claim is meaningless. First of all, ideological issues come up every day that can't be ignored, like that session. And second, it is beyond reprehensible that representatives of the Israeli government would hold an official session in our parliament that supports organizations dedicating to destroying the Jewish state of Israel. That is something that should never, ever happen. Not even in a government that is solely focused on social issues. This does tremendous damage to Israel on an international level. On top of that, many of the anti-Israel members of Israel's parliament should not even be in Israel's parliament. It is illegal, literally illegal for them to be serving in Israel's parliament. They deny Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state, and some of them even support terrorism. There is a law against them serving in Israel's parliament. Yet Israel's progressive Supreme Court always allows these Arab parliamentarians to serve, even though it is literally illegal. Illegal against Israeli law. Please understand, there are plenty of loyal Arab Muslim citizens in Israel who know how blessed they are to live with freedom and equality in Israel. Those should be the Arab Muslim Israelis who serve in Israel's parliament, and they should receive lots of votes to serve proudly in Israel's parliament. However, unfortunately, the ones who actually serve are those who are against the existence of the State of Israel and should be in jail, not in Israel's Knesset. As if all of that is not bad enough, as I said in the beginning, the politicians who led the session threw out an Arab-Israeli friend of mine, Yosef Haddad, who was calling them out for their anti-Israel lies. How's this for irony? A proud Arab-Israeli citizen who stands up for the truth about Israel all over the world, who he himself should be a politician in Israel's parliament because he could loyally represent Arab Israelis who are proud Israeli citizens. He was thrown out by anti-Israel Arab Muslim politicians who are actually illegally serving in Israel's parliament. Sorry, this government must fall ASAP. I have said from the start that whatever good might come from this government will come at a steep price. A price that we should never have to pay, since there are over 65 members of Israel's 120-member parliament that can make a right-wing government immediately if they wanted to. I don't care how much people might despise Netanyahu and the power that some ultra-Orthodox hold in Israel's parliament by pushing them out of the government. Those issues are nothing compared to the absolute disaster this government will bring upon Israel, including actions that show straight-out support for the actual destruction of the Jewish state of Israel, like this session that just took place. Now for the positive perspective. What we are witnessing is a moment of confusion, of fog. Many people are confused about what to make with this, what is going on with this government. They don't understand how it can be that the most right-wing politician ever as Prime Minister of Israel can lead such a bad government. Hence, many people are confused and still supportive of Naftali Bennett and this government, even though they themselves are also against the destructive leftist forces that are part of Naftali Bennett's government. So this is a confusing, foggy time period that will dissipate. It will show the light. The fog will go away, allowing more people to see the truth about what is really taking place. So what is really taking place? What is that truth? Well, not enough people in Israel, or the Jewish people, understand the absolute danger of the ideological left, which here in Israel is not only against the existence of the Jewish state of Israel, blaming all the Muslim terror on Israel and making this a land conflict, but the ideological left is also against Judaism, against family values, and against many of the other Jewish traditional values that have allowed us to exist for thousands of years. The actions of this government, which in essence empowered the ideological left with government positions to influence policy and budget decisions, will basically be the process to wake people up to the danger of the ideological left. So yes, things will get better, but first things will get worse. It's only after things get much worse that people will wake up to the danger of the ideological left. However, things will get better, and much, much better. Even better than before. How do I know? Because finally, those on the right in Israel will understand that it is finally time and necessary to make all the changes to stop the damage of the ideological left in Israel. Up until now, they hemmed and hawed, and they didn't want to go against the media or going to go against the progressive judicial system. So it's going to happen. Even though Netanyahu was prime minister for many years, he did not make the changes necessary because of those challenges. But next time the right comes into power, we will make those changes. So I will not stop calling out the mistakes of this government, but I will also not stop encouraging you about the good and all the good that will come about after the right, and maybe even Netanyahu, return to power. So stay focused and stay positive. Stick to the truth that you know to be true, the truth of the Jewish people, the truth that this is our land of Israel, the true family values we all believe in. The truth will win out in the end. And hold on to your faith and keep on helping me spread the truth.
Pulse of Israel, frontline videos from the Holy Land. Support our work by donating today.